Hello, everybody, and welcome to our seventh masterclass. Well, I cannot believe that we have done seven of these amazing sessions. So just as a bit of a reminder, so we are recording these sessions and we will share them with you afterwards via email, and you'll also be able to access them on YouTube in the coming weeks. So as you know, I'm Alex, I'm the founder of Unheard, and we're on this mission to revolutionize the future of music promotion by providing artists with ample tools to reach their fans across the streaming and social media platforms. And this month's masterclass, I'm very excited to say, in my view, we welcome some of the most exciting tools that artists can use and are actually already using to reach and build new audiences around the world. So when we think of tools in an artist toolbox, I think about content creation, amplifying that content, and collecting and monetizing an audience. And today we're covering all of those areas. So I'm going to throw it over to each of our awesome guests to share a bit of an introduction to the platform that they've built and are working on. And I'm going to start with Daniel at Feature FM.
Hey, I'm Daniel. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Feature FM. What we're building, our mission is to help connect artists, to help connect you to your fans. Whether you are just starting out or whether you're a growing artist, we view artists as businesses. And artists are doing way more than they ever have before. So you make music, you go on tour, you sell merch, but you're also building communities and selling other products and maybe even selling NFTs, if anyone's still doing that. So, ultimately, whatever it is you need to do around your business, our mission is to, help you connect your fans to those areas. So if you're promoting your releases through pre-saves and smart links, promoting your tour through tour links, building a community through communications, owning your fan base, collecting contact info, we're really there through every step of the marketing cycle.
Amazing. Thank you, Daniel. Very excited to chat more on Feature FM. And Jaquel from Fave.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here, and thanks for having me. So I'm Jaquel, CEO and founder of Fave. What we do is we help artist teams kick off and take the most action out of fan-to-fan communities. And so similar to what Daniel said, we recognize how much work and how much of a burden it has been in past to also wear the hat of a community manager. And so what we want to do is offload a lot of that work and lean on the energy of your super fans to authentically create really incredible experiences and campaigns that can amplify across your fandom through different platforms as well. And so we allow fans to share all of the amazing activities that they are doing, promote different and new campaigns across each other, drive a lot of the energy there. And I'm sure we'll dive into many more ways that we do that. But we're really interested in supporting artists with getting back to making music and doing what they're great at and allowing their fan energy to kind of take over. So looking forward to unpacking more ways.
Thanks, Jaquel. And I'm a big fan in obviously leveraging, the power of a community. And lots of people talk about it, but not so many people are great at doing it. So I think what you're doing is like a wonderful job, and I'm excited to jump into that. And Meredith from Laylo.
Hey. Yep. So we call Laylo the drop CRM, and that's built on the premise that drops are really the key kind of milestone moments in an artist's career. So it's really about leveraging those milestone moments and parlaying that into more lifetime value for the artist throughout a tour cycle, an album cycle, an off cycle, and as the artist grows and evolves throughout a career. We like to think of Laylo as just the easiest and most impactful way to capture first-party data and then drive sales and streams over merchandise, tickets, and beyond. And we do that by leveraging Instagram DMs, SMS capture, and email. We work with artists of all sizes, from really up and coming artists to up to legends like Sam Smith, Nicki Minaj, Usher, and Sabrina Carpenter to engage fans across music, merch, and ticket drops.
Amazing. Thanks, Meredith. And just dropping Sabrina Carpenter in there is an amazing bomb to drop. So I love that. And then finally, Diarmid from Rotor Videos. Diarmid, welcome. Are you able to give a quick intro to yourself and to Rotor?
Sure. So my name is Diarmid. I'm the founder of Rotor. What we do, our main goal is to make it fast, easy, inexpensive to create all promotion that we need. So for us, and next canvas, album motion, lyric video.
Okay, that was a choppy introduction, but maybe I'll fill in some gaps. Probably not as well as Dimid has done. But Dimid, if you can hear us, please join with better Wi-Fi or connection if you can. But Rotor Videos essentially automates the process of content creation, creating kind of short form video content using stock footage. So really cool content creation platform for artists who want to quickly put together some content for their socials or for their Spotify canvas, for example.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dimid, I'm going to come back to you in a second. And I want to start this at the start of an artist's journey, because I think all of the tools here that we have impact an artist's journey at each stage of that artist's journey, from content creation through to promotion and community. So if we start right at the start, which is centered around the creation, creation of music, creation of content, can we talk about some tools that fit into this box first? Perhaps I fill in for Dimid whilst his kind of connection's improving. But can we talk about these sorts of tools first? What tools have you guys seen working really well for artists when it comes to things like creating content around your release, making sure your track is mixed and mastered properly, making sure that, I guess you've done like the simple things before you go on and release that music? Is there anyone who wants to start here? Maybe Daniel? You're on mute, Daniel, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to jump in for Diamond there, I mean, Rotor Video is an obvious one that, goes with content creation, especially with, the recent rise in different AI tools that are tapping into the different AI models. There's no shortage of tools in the market that you can use for, mixing and mastering. I think, Lander was the kind of first one that came to mind that I saw had this like automated mixing and mastering, but there's plenty now that are out there helping with that content creation. I mean, it's a generalist tool, but Canva, tried and true, right? Canva's great and also has amazing AI tools now to go in and essentially build all of the assets that you need to share on social media. So just with the technology at your fingertips, and especially with a lot of the automation, creating the content, not talking about the music, but the promotional content and the actual social media content. Even if you just have video and you want to go and have an AI tool automatically cut it into clips for you to share on TikTok and Reels, these are all available now, and it really cuts the time dramatically for actually creating content that's ready to share.
Agreed. And Demi, can you hear us before I throw it over to you?
I can hear you, yes. You guys hear me?
Just about. Let's try it. I'd love to throw this question to you, and let's see. Essentially, what we were talking about is tools that fit into the first part of an artist's journey, which is often around content creation, mixing and mastering your track, preparing to release your music. Could you talk a little bit potentially about how Rotor Videos helps artists create within that first phase of their journey?
Yeah, I think, Daniel, you brought up the key word there, which is automation, right? And there's tons of tools out there now for automation. I think this is the way to go because, sorry, first of all, forgive me, I'm at the Reaper Band conference at the moment, but I've just been spending a lot of time speaking to artists. And a lot of them have this problem is like, well, I'm making music. How am I supposed to do all these other things like marketing my track and working with a distributor, creating video content? So automation is the way, and the more tools that can automate a lot of those laborious tasks for artists, the better. But for us, it's never too soon to start creating video content. And we see that a lot of people, when they release a track, might just think about a music video, or they might wait until the finished track is done or it's mastered or whatever before they start putting out video content. I think it's better to actually get stuff out there and engage an audience as early as possible. Even if you're still in the process of finishing off your track, you can take chunks of it, make short pieces of social content, push it out onto Instagram, push it out wherever it may be. I think this is the way we need to think. How much content can we create and how can we use that to engage an audience?
Yeah, completely. And something that we find is that I spoke to like 120 artists over a 2-week period, which was a little bit silly, but I learned so much from that. And what I learned was that actually it's the preparatory phase where artists are falling down, i.e. they've not got a well-written Spotify bio. They've not got a high-res image on their Spotify profile. They've not got a Spotify for Artists pitch that's well-written. And I think automation, again, can play a massive part in this phase. away from GPT, I guess, as being the obvious point here, Meredith, have you seen anyone engaging with tools here which help in that preparatory phase, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just said, what you guys have all just said, I think is apt. I think in the early phases, it's really about finding the tools, and I think hopefully we're all, you know, part of them. But like your work smarter, not harder tools, because there is so much to do, and the pressure for artists to be businesses and brands and kind of everything to everyone and be content machines is quite high. So you know, I think what you mentioned is like there are tools out here that hopefully can do some of that work for you, or kind of combine some of those tools under one roof, ideally, so you're not having to navigate 20 different tools. Obviously, I think you've collected a great number of them here today, and I do think really leaning into, like you mentioned, Spotify for artists, like these artist portals, that you have these other companies that are there to kind of like pay attention and do some work for you. So I think even like in the early days, I think as an artist, really focusing on the engagement across different socials, finding out where your fans are already gathering, where they're talking about you, where they're sharing links, and leveraging that. Leaning into your Spotify for artists, growing your follower count on Spotify, I think is really key. And then to your point, like I'm not super well versed in the world of content creation. I've always kind of been relegated to the live side. They don't let me touch that. But I'm excited to learn more about it here today. And I think, you know, I think that's everything. It's like for an artist, you can make wonderful content, and the trick is getting it seen, getting it adopted, getting people to connect to it.
Yeah,
and
completely.
Having a plan around a release of like, this is the content we're going to create, this is who I'm going to target, this is how I'm going to push it out, this is the frequency, this is the cadence, etc.
Yeah, completely. And Dimid, you said something interesting there, and I wanted to pull it over to you, Jaquel, here. You know, whereas when I think about Fave, I think about it as a tool that you would, and I might be wrong here, but a tool that you would use in the final part of your journey, right? Once you've built your audience. But Dimid said something there that was interesting, where it's like, don't wait to start promoting your release and fostering that community. Like, how does that fit in? You know, what are your thoughts around that? Can I start using Fave, which I maybe naively thought was an end of phase product, earlier on?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the use case that allows you to use Fave in the best way earlier on, excuse me, than later on, right? Later on would be when you have a thriving community and all you just need is to kind of take that chaos and do something smarter with it, right? And have it work for you. I think in this case, when you're releasing something, when you need to prepare promotional materials, using the energy of your fans who are in fact well versed in, you know, the Canva tools, the AI tools, they have the inside jokes, they have the creativity, they have the local knowledge of what's going to hit in Paris versus in Mumbai versus in London for your tours, and leveraging their energy and expertise to create a lot of these promo materials or gear certain things and for certain local audiences, or amplify a message based on your goals, is exactly where, you know, you can take advantage of this. And so I think we too were like, oh wait, no, this is maybe for a later stage, come to us later. But we're actually seeing a lot of relief happen, because at this critical stage where you don't have a lot of time and bandwidth and you need to be focusing on other things, your fans can kind of go to work for you, either themselves or with a little bit of guidance from you. So it's something we're seeing more and more that we're excited about.
Yeah, we've seen examples, Alex, of people making really short lyric videos. So they might only have a chorus or a segment of their track complete, and they'll make like a 10, 20-second lyric video from it in portrait format, and then push it out on their socials and engage their audience and keep them involved in that process as they go through it.
That's fascinating. I think this is a huge learning, because I'm learning something here as well, you know, about actually starting that process so early on. You know, don't be scared to start to talk to your fans, foster community, create content around your release. And I think this is something we say to artists all the time. It's like, just try it, like test it, use your social media channels as a testing ground. So, okay, so I've used ChatGPT to write a well-written Spotify bio. I've optimized my content. I've started releasing stuff on Rotor. I've started to foster a community on Fave, or at least drive people there. What I want to talk about now is the next phase, which is kind of the amplification phase, I guess, right? You know, you now want to start to reach your audience. And can we start with goal setting? because a lot of the times artists come to us and they just want 1 million monthly listeners in week one or 1 million streams, but actually after a conversation that changes a little bit, right? And it becomes more about, okay, maybe followers, like you said, Meredith, or email signups, whatever it might be. Daniel, can I throw that over to you to start with?
Yeah, you actually said something that I think really struck a chord here, which is, a lot of artists want 1 million listeners overnight. And, I think you might have heard the term, every overnight success happened over 10 years. There's a lot of work that goes into actually building your fan base, building your brand. I think the big theme everybody will hear today is about owning your fan base, right? Everybody now talks about, on this panel, even in the market, the trend of having ownership over your fans and being able to contact them and not being reliant on each individual platform to have to reach your fans for you. And it's critical. I think everybody on this panel is focusing on this and, just coming from maybe a different angle or different starting point. For us as well, artists are at different stages. We have artists that are literally at starting from zero, trying to get from 0 to 1. We have artists with 500 listeners, 1,000 listeners, and millions of listeners. I think that artists can get started using our tools as early as possible. There's always going to be your need to connect your fans, whether it's 1 fan, 10 fans, or 1 million fans, to whatever it is around your business. And we all talk about every artist as a business, and it's true. Like if I look at our business, we last year created around 2 million links for nearly 550,000 artists. But when we first launched our product, I remember I was getting on the phone with the first 2 artists that signed up, the first 3 artists, and really learning from them, what do you think? What are you using? What are the tools that you have? Really trying to understand, who our first artists were and what we can do to help them. So, as a business, it's, you're on tour, you're promoting your releases. Even if you're starting from zero, you always want to turn every engagement into, how do I capture an email? We use the term here, you hear the term return on investment. We use the term return on engagement, return on attention. So how are you turning every touch point, every engagement, every piece of attention into something that you can then leverage down the line? You're looking to build a career for the long term. So this is how we look at building our tools. It's really growing with our tools, because you can start as early as possible. Maybe you don't need to use all the features that we have. Like you're not going to need large globalization and geolocalization if you're just starting to build your community in your hometown. But eventually, when you go global, you're going to want those types of tools. And that's how we look at it. And we have a big focus on being able to capture that fan data, that fan contact info, and automating how you're actually communicating to fans based on what you're currently promoting.
And Meredith, I'm going to throw it over to you in 1 second, but I just wanted to drag over to Jaquel just quickly on this, because Jaquel, how do you avoid, you've just launched a new platform into the market for independent artists. How do you avoid artists being spread too thinly across too many goals or too many things they have to do? How do you keep that focus and set those initial small steps that an artist needs to take, and making sure they're the right steps, on the right platforms?
Yeah, I love this conversation, because I think all of us, it sounds like, have the bias and are encouraging artists to treat themselves like a business, right? And just like coming from product, it's, don't worry about reaching the million users or the million fans up front. Really understand foundationally, right, what your funnel is, what's driving people into you as an artist. Why do people like you? Is it, something about your personality? Is it that they met somebody there and now they're friends, and so they want to keep being in your world because of their friendship, right? Is it because, something touched them in your lyrics? And understanding that why behind why people are a fan of you is going to be so valuable in you scaling. Because if you don't understand that upfront, right, you're going to be scattered, trying to do a million things all the time, keep your head above water, when you don't know what that return on engagement is and you don't know where to spend your energy. But if you take the time early, when the chaos isn't around, to understand what's going on, what your funnel is, and how to convert people and what actions do what with whom, right? Like all of this data that's aggregated across these platforms will make you be able to step much more intelligently, so that maybe you don't have to worry about XYZ platform where other artists do, or you say, you know, well, my style of engagement ends up being at live shows, and so I really want to focus there, or my whole audience is really into virtual worlds. I'm going to spend my time creating some virtual merchandise for them to dive into, right? And so it really helps you focus based on why people value you, and then guide your strategy based on that.
I love that. And I've always said, if you're a well-organized artist, release day should not be stressful. You know, like release day, everything should be done, automated, off it goes type thing. That's rarely the case, obviously. And Meredith, just over to you on the, you know, Daniel mentioned about the importance of first-party data collection, which I think we're all probably advocates of. Do you have some examples that you could share about campaigns that have kind of leveraged the power of creativity to drive that first-party data collection?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, just to echo what Jaquel said is like, you know, I think the key to engaging fandom, it's not just about like getting those big numbers. It's not just about growth. It's really about cultivating and like embracing an artist's own authenticity to figure out what drives a fan base forward and then what engages them. So it's not just focused on money and monetization. It's really focused on like what is authentic to the artists themselves. And I think then we're seeing, you know, I think just inside and outside of Laylo, seeing all sorts of like really cool ways to execute that. I think, you know, recently we work with an artist called Mark Ambor that like completely crowdsourced the routing of his tour using our tools by just basically like using what we call like our multi-drop functionality to assess like where he has basically grow his own heat map, and then use that to just feed to his agent to book the tour that way without anything else other than just like, great, I know I have, you know, this many fans in Ohio and Berlin and all over. So he's booked global tours that way. So I think, you know, I think like also like the more that you get into it, I think it is understanding your audience and how they want to engage. That is the keys to the whole castle. And then figuring out like which pieces of that you want to leverage. And I think the earlier the better, because like your early adopters are going to be your, like, that's your army, you know, like they're the ones that are going to be evangelizing you for the rest of your career. So I think, you know, the sooner that you can do that, I think we've worked with Fred again at Laylo, but he does stuff outside of us all the time. I think he's just like a banner example in understanding his fan base, like, you know, greeting every fan at early shows with like a cup of tea and a hello. I think he's focused on direct interactions above all else. He really leans into SMS and not only just like a you know, technology based like community in terms of like leveraging SMS and Instagram and all that stuff, but also like he's really focused on what happens when you come to his show, the experience you have in person and his experience with you. So I think he kind of always sticks out to me as just kind of like the one who really gets it. I think James Blake is also just doing a hell of a job with Walt right now too.
Yeah,
it'd be great if all artists kind of behaved like startups, right? Like companies, getting into the metrics, finding their audience, finding the conversion rates, what works, what doesn't, you know. I think a lot of artists struggle with that because it seems like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, but hopefully with all the tools that those guys are providing, we make it easy. You know, and I think I've heard it here again today. You spoke to, what is it, 120 artists. You probably heard the same thing, Alex. Making music is one thing, and then it's like they've got a second job to just try and promote that music and get it out there, you know.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's the sense I'm getting here, right? Is that like as a business, when we're preparing to advertise our tools to the community, we spend 80% of time strategizing and then 20% of time on the execution, you know, or something similar. And I guess like what we're saying here is like artists can be patient and take the same approach. But I guess from an artist perspective, maybe there's this sense of impatience in the sense that they've created 10 tracks. They now want to get them out there. But in reality, the best thing to do is to take time and plan and strategize, you know, and then obviously the opportunity to promote becomes greater because you have a stronger strategy.
And I'll add maybe one more thing there, Alex, because especially with the artist hat in mind, there could be a tendency to say, wait, it's not ready for the world yet. It's not ready for the world. Alex told me to be patient. I think there is strategizing in the wild, right? Like being in a period where you are learning, you're figuring out what works, you're building that foundation, you're understanding what the conversion is, but you're doing so publicly so that you get real data back. And to Dermot's point, you're not afraid of that data to incorporate into your strategy, right? So rather than holding and waiting, acknowledge that you're in that learning period and then apply that to scale so that you can do so more efficiently, right?
It's
I
such
love
a
this engagement metric. I haven't heard that term before, but I think that's perfect. Because if somebody, like if you're putting stuff out as an artist, if somebody likes it or comments or engages with your stuff on social, they've taken an action. They've done something to engage with your content. Capture that stuff. Even if, I think it was you, Meredith, mentioned email. I mean, people often think, oh, well, I got to hit TikTok, I got to whatever the latest thing is. Email and email lists still perform really, really well. You know, with Rotor, we get people respond to our emails more than anything. You know, so you can capture people and build that audience and keep them engaged. Amazing. And that's real, real value.
And something I want to double click on here. Sorry, Meredith, were you going to say something there? No. Something I want to just double click on here is, you know, we've talked about the importance of capturing that information. But I wanted, and we've touched on how, but I'd love to just dive into how a little bit more, you know, and help artists understand how they can go about capturing that information. Obviously, Laylo, Feature FM, great kind of collection tools to collect that first party data, but also the importance of content here. You know, Dermot, in terms of Rotor videos, creating the content which you can use to then bring in your audience to start collecting that data. So perhaps, you know, Dermot, start with you just in terms of how important is the content and how can Rotor support there. And then I'd love to hear Meredith and Daniel and Jaquel talk a little bit about, you know, what you've seen work to capture that information really well. We've lost Dermot at the crucial point. So we'll come back to Dermot there. Oh, you're back. No, you're not back. No, you're not back. Let's come back to you, Dermot. Meredith, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I think this is like the perfect follow-up topic because I think, and also obviously one of the reasons you've gathered us all here today is like, I think in terms of like data collection and connection, like your solutions as an artist need to be modular. So like you can work, you know, kind of all of these things in tandem, but ultimately in terms of like collecting that data, I think like your task as an artist or an artist team member is to make it as easy as possible. So obviously there are ways that you can create destinations for fans to go, also tapping into where the fans already are and just making it as easy as possible for fans to give you their information. Like we always say at Laylo too, like every time you add a form field, you're losing 10% of your signups. So you just want it to be like easy as possible for fans to give you that information. And like that just means leveraging every profile that you have. So like utilizing your link in bio to put your feature FM, you know, in there and utilizing that to just have an easy ever present data collection. So if you're outside of an album cycle, a tour cycle, or you're in and off cycle, you just have a really simple way for fans to raise their hand and be like, yeah, I want to know about what you're doing. That's exciting to me. Using that on your website. I can't tell you how many times I'll like go to an artist website and they just don't have anything to sign up for. And that always rocks my world. Same thing in like Instagram, TikTok. They're just really easy ways to use the simplest tools out there to collect that data wherever your fans are already gathering. So that's always just like what I recommend early is just like make it easy for fans to raise their hand. And then you figure out the most authentic way to engage with them. Especially if you have something about, it's easier obviously if you like have something exciting to give. So you say like, sign up here to get access to a pre-sale, sign up here to get first listen to my single, sign up here to get first glimpse of my new video. But outside of that, like make it easy.
It's so true. That Daniel, Dermot, I'll come back to you in a sec, but it's so, and then I'll throw it over to you, Daniel, just first. But it's so true. The amount of artist websites I go to, and I've got nowhere that I can sign up or subscribe. You know, like we work with a huge artist. I won't say his name because it might embarrass him, but he doesn't have a website where we can collect that data. It's baffling. Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah, no, I think Meredith is spot on with, you know, make it as easy as possible. I think it's one of the best examples that, one of the best situations that we see is just if and when you have a piece of content that does go viral, right? How do you capitalize on that? So, you know, if you go viral, it's amazing. You're going to get tons of views, but that comes and goes. And we're talking about how do you build a long-term career. So again, you know, if you're already set up to just collect the contact info and collect fan information from fans that are going to check you out, now you have somebody that you can, you know, actually contact later down the line. So you know, one example that people use our product for a lot is actually what we call the evergreen pre-save, right? It means that you can actually collect pre-saves on a song or an album without even knowing when the release date is. Maybe you didn't even write it yet, but if you just have maybe like a 30-second clip of you just playing the piano and singing something that you came up with on the spot, if that goes viral, somebody could just go to your profile and pre-save it, and you haven't even finished writing the song yet. So that way, whenever you want to release the song, you're already going to capture all of that. So that's, definitely an example. And, there are good situations of just when you want fans to be able to give you their contact info. But yeah, if you make it as easy as possible, you are essentially putting that process on autopilot. So no matter what you're doing, you can always leverage that into a fan, signing up to be contacted.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Daniel. And David.
Yeah, let's fingers crossed. So for me, it's like content is about engagement, right? So there's the capturing of data, there's the return on engagement. But to engage people, first you need content, right? And it's like, for me, engagement is another way of saying entertainment. You got to engage and entertain your audience. So you got to put stuff out there that's going to capture their attention. We've got TikTok, we've got Instagram. People are bombarded with content all the time, So if you're not engaging them, they're just going to drift off elsewhere. Musicians are making music, which is content. So, again, as you were saying, Daniel, you've got a small piece of piano, whatever it is, make something, put it out there, keep your audience engaged, keep them entertained. And then from there, capture the value, capture the data. But you've got to have so much content these days that it's a real pain, because it's expensive and time consuming, which is why, automating stuff as much as we can, bringing down those prices, that's where it's got to go. Because if you're going to be constantly feeding your audience with content, you can't be spending hundreds of pounds as an independent artist every single time.
Yeah. And David, how do you? Sorry, maybe Jack, maybe you could answer this, but I wanted to know how do you avoid that probably very fine line? How do you tread this fine line of avoiding oversaturation with your content, such that the fact that you bore your audience and they switch off, to keeping it interesting, keeping it engaging? And perhaps it's to Meredith's point earlier about, I think it was Meredith who mentioned this, about being authentic, and that authenticity is so important. But how do you manage that?
For me, it's about authenticity. Yeah, it's like, if you feel like you're just putting stuff out for the sake of it, or you're just rushing it out without thinking, I think that's a bad thing. It's got to come from, okay, I've created something here I like. I think my audience would like to see this or hear this, and that's it. And then it's having the tools at your disposal to easily create that content. Just putting stuff out because it's like, oh, we got to throw a lot of shit out there, like, that's not a good thing, because people will walk away from that too. People don't like just being bombarded with nonsense. If it feels right to you, if it's true to you, if you've made something you love, people will feel that in your messaging.
That's true. And I think it's the emotion as well, right? It's like, think how emotional music can be. People write about very meaningful and make themselves very vulnerable when they're writing about things. And that's how people connect, and so I think encouraging artists to be authentic and being vulnerable, I think, can also help bridge that connection. Jaquel, were you going to add something? Sorry, I cut in there.
Yeah. Even to that last point, and then I can circle back on the data point, is addressing that oversaturation. At Fave, we aim to diversify the supply, right? So it's like, instead of it only coming from the artist feeling like they have to, knock you over the head, which you do, right? Just like basics of marketing, you do. In addition, we allow the fans to also mix up the kind of content that's there, whether it's a spin on the content, a remix on the content, or even fan designed merchandise, fan created events, right, that are thrown around the world where the artist can't go today, to still engage them and deepen that loyalty. And so having so many different ways that people can engage in the community, I think, is key. And being able to scale that so that you don't have to be responsible for all of that is really one of the things that we aim to focus on. And I think with that, right, I love the statements of make it easy to capture all of this data, because that's key. To extend the easiness, we aim to make it fun too, where, like, for sharing the data that you have on Fave, you can earn points, you can earn status, right? You can share things that typically don't get captured elsewhere, like how many tattoos you have, how many shows you've been to, how many people you've introduced the artist to, right? How many times a day you think about them, like even funny things like that. And so fans are often like proud to share this. They call it their fan resume. And for that, we give them the level up status, we give them perks for their engagement, and we make it fun for them to feel like they can now get recognized and be empowered to make their own new engagement campaigns that more fans can come in and participate in and share more data around. So it's this nice kind of cycle there. And so I think it's super important to make sure that that authentic engagement is there, but doing so in the easy capture way, in the fun way, so that it works well for everybody, I think is key to just make it continuous so that it's not always on the artist's shoulders. I
love that fun. I think, and I'm just going to summarize quickly, actually, because I love that and I want to come back to that. So I'm an artist, I'm starting out, I'm in that preparatory phase, and I've created my Spotify bio using GPT. I've created my content using Rotor videos. I've created my trackable links using FeatureFM or Laylo. And then I'm in a position where I've done a lot of the preparatory work. Maybe I've started to kind of think about how I could utilize Faves to foster my community further down the line. Then I'm into my promotional phase, whereby I am trying to amplify my audience using social media channels. I'm trying to drive traffic into my trackable links using, again, content that perhaps I've created on Rotor videos. Then I'm starting to foster a bit of a community because my content is good. I'm building that first-party data piece. I'm driving awareness. And then I'm onto this community piece, right? And I think back often to this Charlie XCX documentary where she was on Skype to her fans and they were kind of going back and forth on lyrics. And I thought that kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of it was fun, it was engaging. You talk about Fred again a lot. How have we seen artists, and maybe Jack, how we start with you, given kind of your prominence in this space, but how do we see artists now and then in the future fostering those communities and helping their audience to help them, I suppose, because that's really what they want to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, Charlie XCX came up for us too, because her fans were able to carry forward what a lot of, I think, people were like, oh, what is this album cover? And the fans were like, no, leave it to us. Like, this is actually a very cool one. And so they can flip the script and narrative and drive those forward, especially when you give them the tools for that. But I think where we're seeing the most action of where you can have the fans work for you beyond the promotion is, again, driving that continuous community. We talk a lot about, what you do on cycle in preparation for a release. And while there's plenty to do there, there's a lot that doesn't happen even off cycle or when you're on tour that is important to keep driving sales, to keep driving attention and engagement. And having fans be the ones to, say, for example, start throwing events in different places. We recently did a campaign with Ed Sheeran where fans were able to celebrate the anniversary of his album from 10 years ago that made an impact, I'm sure, in all of our lives, right? Thinking Out Loud, the Multiply album. And they relived that moment. They brought back to life through specialized cakes, through menus, through their own decor, through venue takeovers, everything, even virtual friendship bracelets that they were sending across each other, and just made the era turn from a one-day anniversary celebration that was initially planned to I want to say weeks, but honestly like months, because we're still getting fans who want to celebrate those moments, create different campaigns. They're recreating different moments that Ed did himself at scale, right? So for example, he had a moment where he went with a disposable camera, gave it to a couple fans before his show, and had them take some pictures. And now at future shows, fans are distributing not distributing virtual cameras, but pulling in together all of the different pictures that they're taking to create a shared album based on that. They're recreating baskets that he's given in past, and they're just doing this with their own might, right? And for him, right, it is just deepening the loyalty, creating this as a case study for how they can just continue on the engagement without him having to do much more. And it's because they want to be involved. So I think like recognizing that energy and willingness is there and giving them a little bit of permission to say, go ahead, I think can be powerful. And I'd say, there was another artist that we had where it doesn't take a lot, right? I think, somebody said it before I think it was you, Alex, when you foster that early set, or maybe Meredith, when you foster that early set of people, they are your ride or die for life, right? And we had a situation where it was like 9 fans that we worked with, a handful. You wouldn't think it would drive a lot of impact. Within hours, drove almost 1 million views of content that they had remixed on platform. They drove a single up to #1 by rallying a bunch of other fans, right? And it was an artist that kind of came out of nowhere, dropped a surprise, and took it to the roof. And so it's
Wow.
really cool what you can see when you just put that energy to work in a way that you may not expect. We constantly are getting surprised, and they love to do it. We just want to do it more.
Wow. 9 fans.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Because and then I'll throw it over to you, Daniel. That's amazing because I think I'll come on to that in a second, actually, but it's sometimes daunting for artists when they're starting out to think, how many fans do I need to make an impact? But I think that's a massive statement, Chika.
Yeah, it's finding the right fans to make the impact for you across the community.
Yeah. Daniel?
Yeah, there's a book called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead that, talks a lot. You read it? Looks like you know.
Just
Yeah,
got sent out by a huge dead,
it's
so I love that book
it
right now.
is it has some really good themes in it, and a lot of them which have been then followed in the jam band space by Fish and some of the others that are really you see these bands that have these cult-like followings that will go to 100 shows a year and follow them around, and the question is, how do they do it? And I think one of the key lessons from that book that I took away was they really focus on rewarding their biggest fans over trying to just find new fans. And the example of Fred again, and I know he's given concerts just to like 9 fans sitting in the whole stadium that he did like a day early. We look at someone like Billy Joel that leaves the entire front row empty so that he can bring the people from the worst seats to the front row because he knows they're real fans. These are the things that artists can do to really turn your biggest and most loyal fans into your biggest advocates. What this does for bands like the Grateful Dead and Fred again and others is it makes your brand, it makes your music and your experience about attraction and not promotion. People will come to you, and your fans will pull people into you because you give them such a great experience. And I think that there's a lot of ways for artists to think about what am I doing for my fans that are already here. A lot of artists think so much about I need to grow my numbers, I need to get new fans, and at least X% of your strategy should be that, obviously. But I think that really focusing on what you are doing for your existing fans and your most loyal fans could really pay dividends for your career.
Attraction, not promotion. I love that. That is a mic drop moment. Dimid?
Yeah, it's again, using the startup or the product analogy, it's like the super fans. The way I would look at it is it's like repeat users and then just those kind of blow in, blow out users. So like with Rotor, we might have guys that would make 1 video a year, but then we've got guys that are in making videos every single week, and it's the guys that are making videos every single week that are keeping the platform alive. The other guys will come in and out, and yes, they're treated like every other customer, but they're not the guys that are driving everything. I also think it's a relationship, isn't it? So, Jaquel, you talked about building a community. You've got your community, and a community is a relationship. It's like if you're the only one contributing to that community and nobody else is, you're going to leave it pretty soon. It's got to be a two-way street, and it's got to be a relationship. And making people feel like there is a relationship and that they're connected to you is a way to keep them involved. Make them feel special, make them feel like they're talking to you directly.
Yeah.
I've had an example. Spotify is doing a fairly good job on the merch thing recently, and I ended up buying a Pixies t-shirt 2 days ago. I was not in the market to buy a t-shirt, but I got this email, and I know it was a template from Spotify, and I didn't care. It was just like an email from Pixies saying, "I got this t-shirt." It's like, I'm in. It felt like you've contacted me directly. I know there was hundreds of thousands of people who got that email, but it worked on me, even if I knew it was a marketing trick.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the Pixies too. So that's great. One question. I have 2 more questions, but I'm just going to pause because if anyone has any questions, please pop them into the Q&A section. I've just submitted one there. Please pop them in, and we will have a little bit of time at the end to answer some of your questions. So if you do have any questions, pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Meredith, I just wanted to ask you, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but how does genre influence your community strategy? I.e., traditionally you might think that like rock music and heavy metal was really good when it came to like the merch and the vinyl and like live, whereas other genres like hip hop perhaps were less impactful there. Is that still a thing?
I do think it can. Yes, I do think it's a thing. I think like in the course of my career, from being like an agent to working at Spotify to working at Laylo, I think, and I think they made a great point with like the that Grateful Dead marketing book, which is a great read for anyone. But I do think like the jam band community is like a banner example of what it looks like to authentically engage with fans and develop like lifelong evangelists, without really leaning too heavily into a lot of just kind of like the high tech ways of doing it. And I think like, you guys all mentioned just like, I think that a lot in the jam band community, it's really focused on like, great, we're going to get people there. When we get them, what do we do with them? And then those people are coming back over and over and over again. And I always tell too, like young bands, it's just like, you should be at your merch table yourself after every show, just like talking to your audience and selling the merch and like engaging. Like that goes so far. And even me as like an old woman now, it's like I'm still a ride or die for bands that just like talk to me after their show when I was like 20. And then I also think like, I always kind of think about this when we talk about like marketing strategies around like tours and albums and pre-saves, is like you have, and I dealt with this a lot at Spotify Fans First too, is like sometimes an artist would have like relatively low numbers on Spotify, but they have an incredibly engaged audience. So we would say like, great, you have a lower than normal, like lower than what we would consider to be like the threshold number for monthly listeners, but those monthly listeners are all going to your shows. They're all buying tickets. So, I think like there are some really interesting acts in the indie space. I think also, I'm like rambling a little bit, I understand. Like, I also think in the electronic space, you have such a unique fan base in which like they're engaging on just like these really interesting on-site events. So I think those communities like jam bands, like electronic, when it's actually like what happens at the event is everything. And then you have other kind of genres where it's also like can be more about like the interaction and everything that happens and kind of like you're in between and kind of like these big power moments. I don't know if I answered your question. Just
No,
other than like I'm constantly kind of thinking about genre, and also just like the audience is just like kind of like what age are we talking about? Like when I'm talking about strategies, like there's some artists I'm really like, we really should lean into this like engaged Instagram audience, or we should really focus on getting your follower count up on Spotify, or we should really lean into text messages because you have like a really young audience and that's what's going to hit. So both genre and just kind of like how that attracts the audience, I think is really can help define the strategy.
Great. David, were you going to say something? That was great.
I was. No, that was great, Mary. We kind of experienced the opposite. Like, I used to make music videos. I used to edit and direct music videos, and we never got a lot of people. Never had a lot of heavy metal artists looking for videos, because I mean, pre-YouTube, their audience didn't seem to care. They didn't seem to care whether there was an official music video or not, and even on MTV. You would often see what was live footage just cut in as a video, as opposed to a full music video. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, we can hear you.
But now it's like it doesn't matter the genre. Like you've got a situation where Apple are going to fully release these album motion videos, and if you don't have a video that comes with your release, they will not prioritize it. So it's regardless of genre, you now need video content. Benefit for us, but it's difficult for artists because it just means everybody's got to create more content.
Yeah, completely. Okay, my final question, and then we've got a question in the chat here, and please do ask any other questions if you have them. My final question, and was thrown a little bit by Daniel's statement earlier on the return on engagement, which I loved, and I hadn't heard that before. I think it was you, Daniel, who brought that in. And I was going to ask about return on investment for an artist, because we get asked this a lot by artists. They're saying, okay, if I put $500 into this campaign, what am I going to get back apart from a few streams or a few followers or a few fans? So firstly, should we be talking about return on investment? Is that the right thing to be talking about? And secondly, how do you start to have those conversations with artists such that they start to feel comfortable about investing in their marketing? Maybe Daniel, we start with you.
Yeah, I could start since I brought up the return on engagement philosophy. There's another metric we look at as a business, and it's called the lifetime value. And what the lifetime value tells you is that, over the entire lifetime of one of your customers, what's the value? How much potential revenue could you make from the customer? So when you're looking at ROI, especially in the music space where a stream is, a third of a cent, there is no world in which you buy an ad on Facebook and it is ROI positive on a single stream. It doesn't exist. And it's never going to happen. But when you're buying, when you're spending money on marketing, whether you're buying ads or buying playlist promotion or, using tools that are, collecting the fan email addresses, you want to look at the return over the life of a fan, right? Because whatever you spend, if you're spending $5 to get a fan, but now you have that fan and maybe today you want them to go stream your new album, but tomorrow you want them to buy a ticket, the next day you want them to check your new video or to buy a product. We have an artist that sells beef jerky. It's a product that he launched. And actually, to Meredith's point before, I went to one of his shows and he was at the merch table after the show selling his beef jerky. And people love him. People were there. They know every word to every song. And, I think it was incredible to see, right? And I think we're in an interesting time in the industry where there is just this explosion of independent artists that are able to go about building their own careers, not taking the traditional, label routes, putting their own teams around them. And there's this burgeoning, middle class of artists that are going to be able to make a living off their music. We see the trend is going that direction. We see that the market share for independent artists on Spotify has doubled since 2017. So we're definitely seeing, a shift in that direction. And yeah, and when you're looking at how you manage that and how you invest in your marketing, you do need to think of it like a business, because you are a business and you can have a number of different revenue streams and a number of different areas that are important to you. And your goal is to essentially build up that community, be authentic, and and monetize it, and you'll be in a good place.
Love that. Anyone else have one final comment on return on investment? And then I've got a few questions from the audience.
I talk about this like a lot with artists too, just because like Laylo, costs money to use, but the people that are most likely to buy are going to be in your database. So like your job is to get them in your database. And this is kind of a messed up thing to say, but like every person in your database has a dollar amount on their head. Not like we like to think about fans as dollar amounts, but those are the people that are investing in your ecosystem and your business as an artist. So the more that you're investing in aggregating and authentically collecting that data, the more that you're communicating with those fans, the more they're spending money into your business. So I think it's really just also about kind of like framing it as like it does cost some money to make some money, and that's just the reality of any business in the world, including the business of artists. And so I think it's really about leveraging the right tools to make sure that the fans you're engaging with and the way that you're doing that is paying off for you. So you're seeing those people buy tickets, attend your events, stream your songs, et cetera, et cetera.
I love that. Jekyll, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I'll just add briefly that I'm glad that this is a topic that's being talked about, right? Even though, yes, it's hard and icky sometimes to think about it this way, just understanding that there is a return on investment and what that could be, I think is key. We recently did a kind of a map and an outline of the life of a fan on Fave for somebody who may have come in, say, even just through a live event that they went to and engaged with other people, joined the community, shared their data, and then from there met a friend group, and then started to go on different trips with that friend group, or to go to shows that they weren't going to go to because they didn't have somebody to go with, and that was stopping them from before, right? Or now they're influenced to purchase the product that they were on the fence about because all their friends have it, right? Or now they're the ones who are throwing a birthday party in their hometown, or a cup sleeve event, or something for them to engage more people, right? Or they're creating their own merchandise and driving sales, and you're taking a cut from it as an artist too through the platform. And so I think it's just, important to see, even from our partners as well, what that impact is. I was just connecting with another partner of ours who we use to send a text message to people to promote a certain event that fans were doing. And they didn't even realize that after they sent that message, within minutes, it was sold out, right? And that's attribution back to them. And all of the magic that happened from them engaging at that event and what happened after. So just the fact that there can be attribution and that attribution is important to acknowledge, I think is key, so that all of this data capture that we have and contacting them can be utilized in a way that's smart and makes sense. I'm glad it's a conversation.
Me too. I think the attribution piece is fascinating, isn't it, in the music industry, because typically there have been pretty poor attribution models, nigh on non-existent. So I think the fact that we can start moving towards a place where you can understand what your return on investment might be, I think is really powerful. Right, we've got 3 questions. I'm going to fire them out there at you guys specifically. So the first one is from Ugo Castellazzi. Hopefully I've said that correctly. He said, thank you for the masterclass. Besides pre-saves, profile follows, or playlist ads, what do you think would be the top fan actions that impact DSP's promotional algorithms? Meredith or Daniel, do you guys want to have a go at that one?
As a former Spotify employee, I can provide a little insight into this. In terms of like what's going to get you more attention at DSPs, it is those like basically high intent actions. So at Spotify I mean, I only work with Spotify, so I can only speak to that one, but the follow is like the highest intent signal that Spotify can receive on the other end, saying these are fans that are not just passive, they're not just listening to the artist via algorithmic placements, via playlists, via whatever. The follow is kind of like the king metric. So when programs like Fans First or editors are looking behind the scenes, that is really kind of the key metric they're looking at. That's saying this artist has a lean in fan base. So it's the follow, it's the like you mentioned already, it's the add to playlist. Pre-saves are like nice, but ultimately that's kind of like a false metric. The pre-save is really meant to initiate the first day streams, and that first day stream is a critical metric, which is like why obviously I recommend Laylo, but like don't only rely on a pre-save functionality within your DSP. Also make sure that you as an artist are messaging the fans on that day of release of your first single, the next single, the album cycle. Obviously we've talked to about some like, within Feature and Laylo and some others of like automatic pre-save. So again, the pre-save is not a metric that holds a lot of weight, but that first day listen does really matter. So encouraging follow, like, share, playlist ads. That's kind of the secret sauce, at least on Spotify.
Great. Daniel, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in as well. Yeah, great for getting that sort of inside scoop directly from somebody who is inside Spotify to look at what's most important. But yeah, I mean, it's a great point. Pre-saves are important, but the reason they're important is because of what it leads to. Right. So, when you're running pre-saves, I mean, now Spotify kind of has their own native pre-save the same way Apple does. But that said, when you're kind of running pre-saves, you're typically doing it, through Feature FM or through, another service. And the idea is to look at, what ultimately that leads to. It's you're getting the follow, at least with Feature FM. When somebody pre-saves, you're automatically getting the artist follow. You can automatically even get one of your playlists to be followed that maybe has your songs on it. And it is with the goal of always boosting those day one streams, boosting the saves of your music in people's catalogs. I have a really good example. And, I know the question specifically asked about things besides pre-saves, follows and playlist ads, but those probably are the key metrics. But something I guess sort of similar is we are now we've now expanded a new capability that we have, which is called the Future Save, and it's basically in one click it allows fans to be able to save all of your future releases that you come out with. So with every release, you don't need to start from zero. We talked a lot today about the importance of kind of building your audience over time. Not everything happening overnight, and this is kind of a great extension of that. What it means is that you have release 1, you collect 1,000 pre-saves. You have release 2, you collect 1,000 pre-saves. Release 3, 1,000 pre-saves. But when you release that third one, you're actually going to deliver it to 3,000 fans. And we had a really amazing case that happened recently, and it was actually this year. We worked with Shabuzi, who has one of the biggest hits of the summer, or one of the biggest hits of the year of 2024 with a bar song, and he ran 3 pre-saves using our Future Save functionality, leading up to the album. And by the time he released the album, he delivered 4 times the number of pre-saves as he otherwise would have doing it the old way. And what we actually saw was even in the first 5 days to 10 days, even before all the press picked it up, even before it really, really blew up, we saw, over 30% of the streams were coming from people's libraries. They were actually coming from their catalogs. So, now there's obviously so many factors that play into somebody getting millions and millions and millions of streams. It's not like, hey, this is all just because of a pre-save. But what we see is that when that high of a percentage of your streams are coming from people that actually saved your music, people that followed you, it's a big signal, and it really does help with getting picked up in other areas.
Love that. Thank you, Daniel. And there are other questions, but we are running out of time. So what I'm going to do is those that have asked questions, I can see Eric, I can see Jess, I can see Doug, I think as well. Please send those over to us and we'll get answers to you. Send them to me at hello@unheard.com and we will answer those and come back to you. Because I just wanted one sentence from each of you guys about what an artist should go and do. If they've listened to this, they're now ready to get going. What's one word of advice or encouragement that they can then go and take with them away from this conversation? Jaquel, I know it's not fair because I've not given you much time to think, but what if I start with you and then I'll come round? How's that?
I don't know if you're looking for like cheesy one-liners, but that's all that's coming to mind right now. Like, it's just, you're not alone, put your fans to work is all I can say. And trust your gut, because your fans know your gut and they can see through it, right? So authenticity is key.
Love that. Dermot?
Yeah, for me, it's if you are working on releases, if you've got releases coming up, you're creating content, so try and think of how much you can wring out of that content, how much of that content you can use to engage an audience, whether it's pieces or all of your audio. Use everything you've got to engage your audience, because if you've got fans, they're going to love to hear about it, no matter what.
Amazing. Thanks, Dermot. Meredith?
Yep, I think I would just say focus on your direct fan relationships, community above everything, and the artist should be at the center of everything that you're doing.
Thank you. And finally, Daniel?
Your marketing strategy should not start and end only when you have releases. You should be in marketing mode all year round, all the time, always on.
Great. Well, thank you so much, guys. My notes are full. I've learned so much today. So thank you so much, just from a personal perspective. But hopefully that was useful for all of the artists in our community. We will share this content with you all. And thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciated, and keep doing amazing stuff. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.